It's my pleasure to introduce today two sweet people, Lynn and Bob Strohaver. They've been involved with Kurt from First Pres. They've been involved in being elders before Bob has. We have so much in the way of connection. And as you know, we can still hear you back there. Please come forward. As you know, Pastor Kurt had member spotlights as a vision to connect everyone here in the church. What a wonderful vision he had, because we started it in 2021 with April O'Leary kicking off the first. When she left, a team of us kept up the momentum because we could see how it was working and inspiring both the people who gave their time for a member spotlight as well as the congregation loving it. So we have continued. I brought up the Gulf Breeze because the other part of the member spotlight program, we also we started the Gulf Breeze at the time, and the Gulf Breeze actually helps us do an article to promote the member spotlight, give you a chance to see, do I want to go to that or not, or to know a little bit more, or to take a copy with you after the spotlight and just have that as a refresher of what you've heard today. So we're very thankful that it has continued. And the other thing that I want to do is to thank Bob and Lynn for being a spotlight, particularly at this time of year. When we're up, here in November, we'll have our veterans program. And we always include in the Gulf Breeze, as you'll see when you read this, or if you have already read it, a section on veterans. That has been a major mission of our church. And we're always looking for people who are veterans who want to do the honor flight, because we've been so blessed to have participants in our church do that, both as veterans as well as guardians. So I wanted to emphasize that, and we have carried this on the same number of years since 2021. And we're really happy. Now Annika is the editor of this. She's carrying it on beautifully. So many thanks to her, and many thanks to the whole team here, the hospitality team, the events team, the Gulf Breeze team. And I can't say enough for the people who participate in our church. I would like to start out with a prayer. So if we could all give thanks. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this wonderful couple who has come forward to basically tell their story for the purpose of connecting beautifully with our church. Please bless them. Please open the ears, hearts, and minds of each of our people here in the congregation to also feel connected with them. We are a whole family of Christ believers, and we know that we're a family who really believes totally in you as Savior, dear Jesus. We're thankful for this couple. We're thankful for our congregation. We're thankful for everyone who's online visiting with us through this conversation. In Jesus' name we praise and thank you. Amen. So for no further ado, I want to turn it over to Bob and Lynn.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for hanging around a little bit. We had an Air Force career, but it was a long time ago, and so we'll kind of run through this as quickly as we can, but the military part of it, because the second half of my career was as a dental school professor, and then my third career was retirement, and I've actually been retired longer than either one of my other careers, which is a blessing, and our parents could have never imagined that would be the case, I suppose. We were both born in 1939. We both graduated from high school in 1957, and our parents saw fit to send us to a Quaker college. This Quaker college was, I guess, started in like 1843, somewhere along that time, and they were very puritanical. And quite frankly, we didn't enjoy living in the dormitories, so you may have read in the Gulf Breeze that we kind of eloped. We talked our religion professor into marrying us, and he finally agreed to do that, and he married us in the Quaker Meeting House on the campus, and his wife was our only witness. And we rolled the dice, and fortunately our wonderful parents continued to support another 6 years of our education. Earlham College really defined me, I guess. The Quakers were conscientious objectors, and even as a 19-year-old, it was clear to me that in order for them to object, other people had to protect that right to do that. So I guess that, and my Boy Scout days, I suppose that made me amenable to wearing a uniform down the road. The college had a program that was called Professional Option, and what that allowed was if you could get accepted into a professional school after 3 years, they would waive the senior year and give you your AB degree when you graduated from the professional school. So we rolled the dice again, and I was lucky enough to be accepted to Indiana University Dental School after 3 years. We chose Indiana because it was Lynn's hometown, and the married housing at IU was almost right across the street from the dental school, so I could walk to school. And I was hearing from people that graduated ahead of me that they'd opened an office, or they'd bought a car, bought a home, or whatever, financed it, gotten drafted. The doctor's draft law was in effect because of the Vietnam War. I got drafted and I had to declare bankruptcy. They couldn't make their payments on their Air Force salary. So they were urging people to volunteer, and so that's what led us to the Air Force. I applied and was accepted. And after graduation, that was a very busy time. I had applied to take the Indiana State Dental Board exam, so I'd have a license. And then a week or so after that, I went to Columbus, Ohio, and I took the Indiana State Board, and fortunately I passed both those two, so I had 2 dental licenses when I went into the Air Force. Upon graduation then, we received orders to go to basic training. The OBMTM thing there is the Officers Basic Military Training, medical, and the class of 65H, which was July. And that took roughly a month. We did have a little bit of a bivouac, and the class was about 150 people, about 1/3 physicians, 1/3 dentists, and 1/3 nurses. And most of those people didn't want to be there. And so the folks that were attempting to train us were very frustrated, because if you were trying to march, somebody would deliberately turn the wrong way, and everybody would laugh, and it was a bit of a problem. But we made it through, and as you see here, I'm wearing the formal uniform. The main thing they taught us to do after we bought our uniforms was teach us how to get dressed. And we learned a little bit about Air Force administration and so on. The white mess, called the mess dress, the tuxedo was called the mess dress, and it had a white coat and a black coat for summer and winter. The first assignment then, I meant to tell you, we got paid that one time in an old military pay situation outdoors, where they had strong boxes and handed out stacks of $100 bills. And when I got that handful of $100 bills, I thought I was rich and going to heaven, So we had several years there in school where we didn't have much, and so finally we had a little bit of money in our pocket. We lived in the base housing then after the years in married housing in college, and this was a step up, if you can believe that. And on that particular street, it was all helicopter pilots except for a flight surgeon and myself. and we worked in this facility. And I'm going to do most of this because Lynn's having a little vocal cord issue right now, so I'm going to have to carry the load for a few minutes here. So this was the first clinic where I actually worked as a dentist after graduating, and fortunately the lieutenant colonel that was the commander of the clinic was an outstanding mentor. He really taught me how to be a dentist and how to run a dental practice and so on. I'm showing this airplane, the SR-71 Blackbird. This was years later. We were at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, and they had an SR-71 on static display, which we had an opportunity to see up close and personal. But at the very first formal meeting that I had in the Air Force, the speaker was the Air Force communication officer, and it was a one-star general that started his speech, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, "Gentlemen, we now have an aircraft that can take off from the east coast of the United States at 1 o'clock, photograph the entire continent of Europe, and be back in the United States by 4. Well, this Blackbird, still to this day, it's been retired for a long time, but to this day it was never shot down because it was out of reach of the air-breathing missiles. But it still holds the speed records over 2,000 miles an hour and altitude record of almost 80,000 feet. Most of the guys that flew this thing had astronaut wings. And I had a couple of patients that were pilots of the SR-71, and one of the guys said, "I think if we strapped another engine on this thing, we could put it in orbit." The squadron of helicopters, pilots that lived in our housing area became very close friends, and I didn't know what their mission was. I knew that they had high security clearances, but I was never sure exactly what they did, even though I flew with them and went to the club with them and whatever. They had a highly classified mission, which we found out later was the evacuation of the White House in case of a national emergency. But that mission became obsolete. And that base, while we were there, they decided they were going to close it down. And the reason that the base became obsolete was because the advent of the sea-launched ballistic missile. If a submarine could pop up on the Atlantic coast a few miles off the coast and fire a missile, the reaction time was only about 10 or 15 minutes. So that mission was absolutely obsolete at that point. I show the Greenbrier Hotel here, but the underground Pentagon was up in the mountains by the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. My reward for deciding to take another tour, and that was a bit of a story too, but when it came time for our first 2 years to be up, we had to make a terrible decision. How are you going to throw a dart at a map and say, I want to live there for the rest of my life, doing the same thing for the rest of my life? Or do I want to keep doing this where I'm having a good time and practicing dentistry every day, just like I would there? And we looked at each other and said, well, let's give it another go. So my reward for doing that was to be sent to the end of the Aleutian Island chain for a year by myself. And so the one kind of cool thing that happened, this base was closing, and I had to get rid of all the stuff that was in the clinic. And I asked, what should I do with this? And they said, well, just throw it in the dumpster. And I thought, you got to be kidding. So I had the supply folks build me a huge crate, and I put all the instruments and supplies and whatever that I had, and had them stencil my name and my address in Alaska, and I sent it to the base up there. And when I got there, I was sure glad I had that stuff. But anyway, Chemia is 1,200 miles from Anchorage, and got off the plane and I went in these doors here. That dog in front his name was Boozer. He was kind of was kind of the mascot. He greeted everybody when we came in. And I walked down that hallway, and there was a big sign, a round sign on the wall that was from the Department of the Interior, and I think the date was 1921 or 22. And it said that we have determined that these islands are unfit for human habitation, and therefore we've moved the Aleuts to the mainland. And they did. They moved all the Indians, the Aleuts that lived on these outer islands, on the mainland. And I was really pleased to know that I was going to spend a year in a place that was unfit for human habitation. This main building, the composite building, was a specially designed building, so if there was an earthquake, the walls would fall out instead of in, because earthquakes were so prevalent in the Aleutian Islands, the so-called Ring of Fire. And life there was not too great, but frankly. And the purpose of the place was intelligence gathering, of course. These radars bracketed all the Russian launch sites, missile launch sites, and the dome allowed them to follow satellites as they went in orbit around the Earth. And after 2 or 3 revolutions of a new launch, they kind of had an idea of what the satellite was all about and what its half-life was and so on. And even then, in 1966, they were cataloging every piece of space junk. And there were thousands up there already by that time. It must be a blizzard nowadays. And I show this aircraft because I had the opportunity. It was one of the most secret aircraft in the service because it was trying to find out what kind of fuel the Russians were using in their launches, because they had a much higher throw weight than we did at that time. They could launch heavier stuff into orbit. And they didn't know what kind of fuel they were using. So this plane would try to fly through a contrail and analyze the exhaust gases and try to figure out what the fuel was that they were using. Well, naturally, the MiGs didn't like that, and they often were chased. But I show the airplane because I had an opportunity to write on it. My grandmother died, and I had an emergency leave situation. And my commander saw fit to, we had no aircraft, normal aircraft. The only way I could get back was on this airplane, and I got permission to be on it. But I had to sit in the jump seat between the pilot and the co-pilot for 1,200 miles because I wasn't allowed to go in the back end of the airplane. And again, I'm showing it because I found out a year later that some of these guys that I knew, the plane disappeared over the Bering Sea, and no piece of evidence or body was ever found. Life there was kind of strange, but I usually work 7 days or 6 days a week, and we did explore the island a little bit, and the fishing was pretty fantastic when the salmon runs came along. And after that year, the guy that sent me there said, go up there and do a good job and let me know what you want to do. And so I called him, and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to thaw out. And he said, I'd like to go to California. And so I was given that assignment. And I've got to say that everything I asked for after that year, I received. I showed up at this place, and they decided that I'd be the dental officer for flying personnel. And this was McClellan Air Force Base in Sacramento, California. And that was about the same time that the moonwalk was going on, and Sacramento played a large role in the building of the space vehicles. This was a squadron that was a weather squadron, but the crews were being rotated to Vietnam all the time because these planes had the capability of being the eye in the sky, of being able to warn the fighter pilots of incoming aircraft or incoming missiles. And so they were constantly being rotated through Vietnam. So we lived in base housing once again, the 3-bedroom duplexes, and again, a little better step up. These were rather new. And Julie and Jeffrey, I think she was 8 and he was about 4 at this point. And we had a great time those 2 years exploring California. And I'd like for you to just kind of keep track of Lynn's hairdos during these pictures. After those 2 years, I was lucky enough to be accepted for specialty training, and they gave me a choice between Ohio and Ohio State and Texas. And of course, there was no choice. Since I was from Ohio, I had to go see the Buckeyes. And that particular year, they were the defending national champ also. But at any rate, during that year, I was promoted to major, and I got my master's degree, and fortunate enough that my thesis was published in our national journal, and that gave me some name recognition early on in my career. And then we went back to Wright-Patterson Air Base to the hospital there for a 2-year residency, and that was the home we lived in. And there's our 2 dogs. We had the Sheba, the lighter colored one. Lynn brought her home as a puppy that was left in the snow in housing in Indianapolis. We had her for 18 years, and then the other dog, allegedly Jeffrey, the dog followed him home from school one day, and we had him for over 18 years also. So this was the medical center where I did my residency, and that dental clinic was on the ground floor of that wing on the right side there. And my 2 mentors were both full colonels, outstanding mentors. And that was the dental badge that we wore on our uniform. If you just had the D, that was the general dentist. If it had the star, it meant you had specialty training, and if it had the wreath around the star, it meant you were nationally board certified. And they subsidized all those steps if you wanted to go through them, for a reason, because they needed teachers. In January of '73, my boss said, "I want you to keep your appointment book open next month." And I wasn't sure why at the time, but it turned out that was Operation Homecoming for the POWs that were being released from the Hanoi Hilton. And as you see here, there were 591 POWs released. 144 that they know of died in prison. I suspect there were more than that. And to this day, then, this is the purpose of all this, that these folks are not forgotten. There's still 1,500 remaining MIAs from the Vietnam War. There were 58,000 killed during the 10-year period. And that sounds kind of horrible, but it occurred to me the other day that 70,000 people died from fentanyl a couple years ago. So one of the, this was the pictures of the so-called Hanoi Hilton. It was built by the French at the end of probably 1890s, somewhere in that vicinity. A terrible old place that had no facilities basically inside. It was a horrible place to be imprisoned. And people that were there were tortured almost every day. And when they complained about it and said, "You're not treating us according to the Geneva Convention," they were told that they were not POWs. They said, "You people are war criminals and you're going to be treated accordingly." And most of these people were air crews because they were the most hated and the most feared by the people. So one of the first ones that I met was Bill Ball here, and he was from my hometown in Piqua, Ohio, when we became kind of close, and he's my example of this group. He was shot down by a missile on his 50th and last mission before he came home. He was with me for a couple months because he had a bunch of broken teeth and things had to be removed. And there was healing times involved and so on. But this was the day he got his new teeth, and he got the crowns and partial denture and an upper complete denture. And he was allowed to live in Piqua, Ohio, which is only 25 miles from the base. So he went back and forth to his dental appointments. He was the only one that was allowed to do that. And I showed the appliances, or the crowns here, because we had to do all of our own work, our own laboratory work as residents. It was part of their training program. And the reason for that was because, number one, you had to do that in order to pass the National Specialty Board, but in addition to that, as a prosthodontist, you were always in charge of the dental laboratory and supervised the dental laboratory technicians. Bill lost his right eye as he bailed out and got bounced on the ground through the rocks on a hillside in Vietnam. But he went on and retired as a full colonel. And I show a couple of others that were prisoners in the Hanoi Hilton because they live here in Naples. And this is Lenny Eastman. He was a naval pilot, a reconnaissance pilot off of an aircraft carrier. And he admitted to me that it was his fault that he got shot down. He was trying to get too good of pictures of an aircraft battery that had been given him a bad time. And he said, I got too close and they got me. He was a prisoner of war for 6.5 years at the Hanoi Hilton. And he lives at Cedar Hammock Country Club where we did. We've had dinner with he and his wife. And this is Wayne Smith. Some of you may know Wayne. He was one of the early Air Force Academy graduates. And I think he got out of the service when his 6 years were up. But he was a prisoner for 5 years in the Hanoi Hilton and flew for the airlines for a while and then became a very successful businessman here in Naples. And some of you may know that name, Wayne Smith. And those guys, I think, were probably the most heroic people that I knew during my whole military career. Our next assignment then as a specialist for the first time was back to California, again at our request. And it was Castle Air Force Base in the valley near Atwater or Merced, California. And it was kind of midway between Yosemite National Park and Carmel by the Sea, two of our favorite places. And it was a great place to live. And we were there for 6 years. And this is my parents along a 17-mile drive on one of their visits to see us. My dad was an engineer and was hired by the Hartzell Propeller Company in 1940, and they made a lot of propellers during World War II. And he spent his whole career with that company. And my mom, Betty, was a stay-at-home mom for my brother and I, and when we got in college, she became the assistant to the minister of the First Presbyterian Church and was the voice of the office for a number of years. In that picture, she had just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, so that was kind of sad. We enjoyed those years, had a camper. There were lots of places to camp and fish and just enjoy the beautiful sights of California. And also kind of a life dream of my dad. I had the opportunity to take him to play Pebble Beach and Spyglass Hill. Toward the end of that assignment, I was promoted to lieutenant colonel, and Lynn's parents also voted every year. This is Robert Weigel. He was a pharmacist by trade from the University of Wisconsin and joined the Eli Lilly company as a young man. And by this time, he had become an executive with Eli Lilly. The next assignment, they told me I was going to have an overseas assignment since I never had one. And I asked for Germany, and I received it, and was sent to Ramstein Air Force Base, which is the headquarters, Air Force headquarters in Europe. And so it was a rather large clinic, and we were there from 79 to 82. I was promoted to colonel at that time, and as the prosthodontist, and also served as the consultant to the Surgeon General in my specialty, prosthodontics, and that required the visiting of all the bases at least once a year. And I was the assistant director of that clinic. So the administration began at that point. We went from there, I'll mention that we really enjoyed our tour in Europe. We spent a lot of time traveling. I didn't have to pull call anymore at that stage of the game, and so our weekends were free. And this particular picture, we were in Barcelona over I guess it was Thanksgiving vacation. And Jeff was probably a senior in high school at that point at Kaiserslautern High School in Germany. And Julie, all grown up now, was going to school in Munich for a couple of years. The other picture there is the famous Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. And if you ever want to see proof that freedom is not free, this American cemetery pretty well says it. George S. Patton is buried at the bottom of this hill, and this is 5,000 Americans that died during the Battle of the Bulge and the subsequent invasion of Germany. The other picture is Salzburg and the Salzburg Castle, and that was a remnant from wars back in the Middle Ages. We had the opportunity to spend a great week in Monte Carlo at one point, and here's Lynn standing on the top of that building, and there was that whole top of the building was a swimming pool and bar area and whatever, and it was clothing optional, and as were the beaches in Monte Carlo, and the only option we opted was to not stare. From there, we were reassigned back to Wright-Patterson again at my request because my mother at this point was in pretty bad shape with Alzheimer's, and we bought this house. And again, there was a change in hairdo there, you see. So this was the hospital at Wright-Patterson. By this point, the two huge additions had been added to it since I went there, and I got to the point that my boss had the audacity to retire, and I had to become the director of dental services. And here again, I had to visit all those bases once a year as the consultant to the Surgeon General in prosthodontics. And frankly, I was getting kind of tired of the administration business, and I was thinking about retirement, and I decided, well, I'd rather practice and teach than be an administrator, so I put in my papers for retirement. So that career was 65 to 86. I began looking for teaching jobs, interviewed several places, came home all excited. They offered me this, they offered me that, and I asked her what she thought, and she said, "Does it snow there? I'm not going." So we ended up in the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston, and that turned out to be a wonderful decision. We enjoyed it there very much. So I was hired as an associate professor in the Department of Removable Prosthodontics, and I taught all the complete denture courses, laboratory and clinical. That was what I was hired to do, and then later they decided to make me the director of the Dental Faculty Practice Clinic, where we could practice 1 day a week part-time. And then down the road, they weren't teaching dental implantology in 1986, and so they allowed me to start the dental implantology program there. This is a house that we bought. It turned out to be a great choice also because from then on we lived on a country club for the rest of our time. And this is a place called Snee Farm Country Club, and it was in a very historic area of Charleston area, adjacent to the Boone Hall Plantation, which some of you have probably seen in the movies about the Civil War and so on. it was also about a little less than a mile to the beach, and we had our own golf cart and could go right out the backyard and play golf if we wished. Had a number of friends there, were well connected, and we had an opportunity to go to the Masters tournaments and play at the member guest at Pinehurst, and golf was a big part of our lives. Here's Lynn teeing off on the 18th hole at Kapalua that you see every year on TV. And that was a week at a Ritz-Carlton on Maui. Another table here, hosting four of a group of 20 students that I taught a course for a week in Taiwan. Here we are taking a little harbor cruise in Hong Kong. And in 2000, we decided to retire and move to Naples. And so this was the house that we built. And this is the backyard of that home. And some of you may recognize the name of Jay Boudeshwar because he was the Naples city manager for a while until he received an offer that he couldn't refuse and went back to the other coast. And incidentally, he's renting that house right now, and the man that's renting it is the interim minister at First Presbyterian Church. And the other picture, I show it just because it was the last dental lecture that I gave in 2002. That was in Las Vegas, and I got home and added it to my CV, and it was I couldn't believe it, over a 30-year period, it was the 300th lecture that I'd given at a dental meeting. So, why did we come to Naples? Well, Lynn's parents moved down here in 10th Avenue South in 1980, and it was a great place for us to come and visit. Here you see us, and you see Jim and Ella that are with us every Sunday. And Lynn's mom, her dad unfortunately had passed away by this point. And the fellow next to Ellen there on the right is David Weigel, and some of you will recognize that name because he was the county attorney for many years here. In the other picture, my only brother lives in Michigan. He went to Earlham College, unfortunately, like I did, and received his master's, I think, at Ball State in political science, and went right to work for Jackson College up in Michigan and spent his whole career there and retired recently as the executive vice president. And he's going to be here next week, I think, if all goes well. We spent a lot of years coming down on vacation, and even in when we were in Germany, we came back for Christmas because we could see the fireworks from the driveway of 10th Avenue South, and we spent a lot of beach time. And right now, I think we're putting our dermatologist son through MIT because they get a hunk of us every 6 months. And the other picture here is Jeff and Julie all grown up, and I got to say, we miss the pier like all of them. Our daughter Julie married Bill Barrington, and sadly Bill died about 5 years ago, but she still lives on the ranch in California. On our 80th year, we took the whole family to Alaska for a fun trip. And here's Jeff and his wife, Ann, and they live in Orlando and have lived in Orlando their whole married career. And it might be of note that they had their wedding at the chapel in Yosemite National Park. So the logistics of that were a little bit of a problem. We've enjoyed cruising since we've been retired. I think we've probably, I think the number is somewhere between 40 and 50 countries that we've visited in total. And we love going to the golf tournaments. And Lynn's got a portfolio with golfers, and here she is with Tom Watson and Gary Player. And one of the things that gave me a lot of satisfaction since I was retired is I was a mentee mentor for the Champions for Learning, and they're the folks that give out the Golden Apple Award and do all that sort of thing. But this particular program was a program for gifted, underprivileged children that might not have gone to college otherwise. And this is Alex, Alex. And when we met, I said, well, you don't have a dad and I don't have a grandson, so this ought to work out great, and it did. And, I'm very proud of him. He was the first student from Lely High School to get an appointment to a military service academy. And Alex graduated a couple years ago, and we just saw him again this summer when he came back from duty in Iraq. Okay, and that's now we're at Sienna Lakes. We've been there for 3 years, and we enjoy it very much. And that was probably our last move until Mary Miller and the Neptune Society move us to the wall of the First Presbyterian Church. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bob and Lynn, for kicking off our season. And I also want to just thank Dustin for supporting all that he does behind the console over here. And before we close it out, asking Pastor Kurt to come up.
And even though we can't be with you today, my brother and I would like to say that in addition to all of the things our folks have done and seen and accomplished over the years, we think they deserve a Lifetime Achievement Award for being the most wonderful parents. It might have taken more than 2 decades to figure that out, because in the early years, it seemed like their parenting model was stricter than many of our friends' parents' model. In retrospect now, we are so grateful for their strong moral and family values and their high expectations for us in terms of civil behavior, education, self-responsibility, and the pursuit of happiness, pretty much in that order. Not to say that we didn't have great vacations and holidays, adventures, etc., or plenty of fun, because we had many, many, many of those too. We are so blessed and fortunate to have parents who navigated through 66 years of marriage together and have guided, loved, and supported their kids in every possible way for 65 years. That's almost as uncommon as finding common sense these days. But kids take parents for granted until they grow up and find out how challenging life can be. So thank you, Mom and Dad. And thanks, NCC, for the opportunity to chime in. Julie and Jeff.
How good does it get, you guys, right? It's wonderful. Can you have a microphone over there, Lynn? Yes. Can I ask you, 66 years, just this question. What did it take to make it 66 years with this guy?
Thank you.
Here.
I don't think it's on. Oh, gosh. What did it take? Well, a sense of humor helps. Perseverance helps. Time apart once in a while helps. But basically, we get along great, so.
From my standpoint, I think you could tell by the hairdos and all the different blondes and brunettes and whatever that I slept with. Variety's the spice of life, I think.
Well, we also saw a lot of different images of you too, Bob. Maybe that's part of it. And golf was a great big part of it.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we thank you so very much. Because of the timing, we're going to adjourn at this point, but if anyone wants to speak individually with Bob and Lynn, we welcome you to come up and talk with them. Thank you very much.